Hemmer is a genius. Uhura says she's like the princess and the pea, and strawberries are La'an's comfort food. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello, hello.
My name is Ryan T. Husk, and I also like strawberries. Today, we're doing a review. I mean, not as much as La'an, maybe, but we're doing a review of Strange New Worlds Season 1, Episode 3, Ghosts of Illyria, written by Akela Cooper, we'll have to check on the pronunciation of that, and Bill Walkoff, directed by Leslie Hope. How you doing today, Cirroc?
I'm doing very well. The French word for strawberry is
fraise. Yeah, fraise.
Fraise. And the reason is because it was Fraise who genetically modified the common garden strawberry that we have today.
Fraise?
Yeah, there's a geneticist whose name is very similar to Fraise.
Really?
Who discovered
I'm waiting to see if this is a joke or if we're learning something
today.
I can't tell.
We're actually learning something. So the strawberries were wild in the past, and they were actually made to be the kinds of strawberries that we eat today, which are the garden strawberries, were a result of genetic modification or engineering. And that was brought to you by a French scientist. Yes. So
wow.
A little history on that.
Excellent knowledge. Okay. So this episode here, by the way, I'm wearing a cool Strange New Worlds shirt. Next time you see this shirt, it is going to be all kinds of different colors because it comes with a tie-dye kit. So we're going to be tie-dyeing like way back in the day.
Oh,
so next time you see this shirt, it will still have this cool design on it, but it's going to have all kinds of crazy colors. Or maybe it'll all just be a big beige mush because I don't know what the heck I'm doing. We'll see. Stay tuned. Okay, so this episode had a lot of stuff in it. First and foremost, I just want to say we first were introduced to a Pike episode. That first episode was like a Pike episode. Then the second episode was like an Uhura episode. This was clearly a number one Una episode. And what we're finding out, it seems, is we're going to know whose episode it is based on who has the log at the beginning of the episode, right? First thing, Uhura had her log in episode 2. Una had first officer's log in episode 3. And I'm immediately going, yes, I love the idea of everybody getting their own personal kind of episode. I mean, they're not like super focused on that one character, but that character has a little bit more focus than the others, or we at least know that that character is going to introduce some new aspect of them, or we're going to learn something about them, or something's going to be revealed about them, right?
Right. And obviously right now we're in the first season or in the third episode. We're still trying to get to know all of these characters. We talked about some of the peripheral characters that we want to see a lot more about. We've got to know a little bit about La'an. Dr. Mbenga got some background in this episode a little bit as well with his backstory and his daughter and whatnot. So we're starting to get a little bit more feel for who these characters are. In this episode, as you pointed out, number one's character being an Illyrian, which I don't know much about. So I was hoping you can kind of give me a little background on that, or if that's something we've seen before. And
yeah, it's, I believe actually Casey Biggs in Enterprise played an Illyrian, if I remember correctly. Casey Biggs, we all know and love as Damar on Deep Space Nine. And I don't remember much about it, though. So we're going to have to go jump over to Don Crandall to give us that information. Actually, I could pull him up right now. Let's see. Yep. You knew Don Crandall was going to cover this. Actually, this is something I didn't know. The Illyrians were first mentioned in D.C. Fontana's Star Trek novel, Vulcan's Glory. Interesting. And are often mentioned regarding number one in recent Pike era novels. By the way, her established name in the novels, long before Strange New Worlds, was Una. So that is also from the novels. However, Una's actually being an Illyrian differs from several novels that establish she was a human raised by them. Okay, so in the novels, she wasn't Illyrian. She was a human that was raised by them. Then he says, we finally see the Illyrians in an episode of Enterprise, Damage. Deep Space Nine's Casey Biggs, there he is, played the Illyrian captain. They had forehead prosthetics, right, and did not resemble the human-looking Illyrians in today's Strange New Worlds episode, nor was there any mention of their being genetically enhanced. Yeah, so that's why it didn't ring as familiar, is because I didn't remember them having all of these other situations and being augments and enhanced and all this. So I thought maybe it was just something I missed or something in the novels, but apparently no, they're just expanding on a race, kind of like what Deep Space Nine did with the Trill. The Trill were introduced in like 1 or 2 episodes of Next Generation. They had different makeup and they changed their makeup into what we know as Dax. Just like this, they had different makeup in Next Generation or in Enterprise. And now apparently Illyrians look exactly like humans, which I don't know, is a little strange, but maybe they do that in order to, have her pass as human, or maybe she's just genetically enhanced or genetically altered to fit in with humans.
Yeah. It was an interesting background story on her. I thought I heard Dr. Soong's name brought up in this episode, referring to Brett Spiner. Yeah, referring to Brett Spiner's character.
Mm-hmm.
So I did think I heard it. I thought I heard it at some point when Lieutenant La'an was talking with the number one about being augmented monster. I thought there was some kind of reference to Dr. Soong in that.
Yeah, I mean, it must have happened, and I must have just missed it because Dr. Soong in Enterprise also, created these augments. He had like a little army of augments, and this was also played by Brent Spiner. So I'm sure she did mention it, and I just missed it because that would have been exactly when they would have talked about it for sure.
Yeah, no, it did come, and it's funny because when I looked up Illyrians, they actually are a group of people that existed at some particular point in time. The Greeks and Romans wrote about the Illyrians, who essentially occupied a territory that is today Albania, Montenegro, and Kosovo, and also much of Croatia and Bosnia Herzegovina. So
Yugoslavia.
So that whole area at one point was known to inhabit a group of people called the Illyrians, or referred to as Illyrians. So they're real people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I thought I'd get some Star Trek info, and I got a real group of people.
Yeah, and Armin Shimmerman, who played Quark, has a novel series that he's doing about Illyrians as well, Shakespeare Time. So everybody go check that out, and you could go buy Armin Shimmerman's book, which is amazing by all accounts. Everybody is very excited about the first one, which has come out already. The second one may be out already as well. So definitely go check that out. Do yourself a favor. You've earned it. But we did touch on something, or you did, Cirroc, on something that I guess we might as well jump on. First of all, 2 things. Number one, you mentioned Dr. Mbenga, right? Now, before the season started, I wanted to be sure I was pronouncing his name correctly. Mbenga, right? Then we hear Pike calling him Mbenga. So we're like, cool, now we know it's Mbenga. Fine, great, moving on. Well, Una here called him Mbenga. And I was like, damn it, just when we all agreed on how to pronounce it, she had to throw a curveball. And she did it every single time. It wasn't like once. So I'm like, okay, apparently she's just going to call him Mbenga. Or maybe it's going to be one of those things where Janeway called Chakotay. She used to call him Chakotay. And then like in the third season or something, there was like a Native American guy that visited and called him Chakotay or something. So then Janeway started calling him Chakotay for like a little while there. She kind of adopted that a little bit, and then it kind of molded back. But the main thing was, to me, the highlight of this story actually was Dr. Mbenga's little mini story that really could have been a short trek, I thought. That was absolutely a short trek at the end there. And it was beautiful. And I think it was Dr. Marie Segal, our very own associate producer, that said it was reminiscent of The Visitor, but kind of in reverse, where it is the child that's watching her father grow older rather than the father watching his son grow older. And it's a very touching moment. It's a very good story, and they left it open-ended. So we know at some point this thing can and probably will be revisited. But that was the highlight for me.
Yeah, and I think that's a very good observation that Dr. Anne-Marie Segal made as far as the kind of parallel in the Mbenga story and his daughter. I like the idea of him keeping her in this buffer pattern and being able to still hold on to the little bit of life that she has left and stretch that out. I thought that was a beautiful story. But I also did think that there were elements that were also like Deep Space Nine, not just this visitor-like story with Mbenga and his daughter, but when number one at the end of this episode gives her whole spiel, captain's log, or her own log entry, and then she says, "Computer, delete entry."
Yes.
And I was like, that's definitely a nod or a steal or whatever you want to call it from In the Pale Moonlight.
Yep.
When Sisko does that, right?
Yeah, and when she said her long log, and then she said, "Computer," I like stopped and I was like, "Say it."
Yes.
Say it. Because she gave that long pause and we're like, "Say
yes.
it." And she said, "Delete that entire personal log." And we're like, "Yes."
Yes. And so that right away, I was like, "Oh, that's a nod to the In the Pale Moonlight." Another moment that was reminiscent to me of Avery Brooks and his performance as Benjamin Sisko was at the towards the end of this episode when Pike and number one have this conversation. She walks into his office, says, "Hey, I'm going to report myself to Starfleet. I lied. I am an augmented, genetically enhanced person, and it's against Starfleet rules or whatever." Pike says, "Yeah, don't worry. I'll deal with that. That's a conversation I welcome to have. I got your back in this." And that was a great exchange between the two of them.
Yeah, I really like that line. Just real quick, when she says she asked him to discipline her, and she said, "Well, Starfleet could come after you," and he said, "I welcome that discussion." Yeah, like you said, I thought that was probably the best line in the episode.
I do too, and I like the way he's representing standing up to bat for her. I welcome that discussion, meaning, yes, it'll give us an opportunity to expand our consciousness and deal with this in an appropriate manner. And I think
stand up for the Illyrians as well as a whole.
Right, as a whole. So I think that is just that one line represents so much. It's in the world in general. It's if people stood up for each other like that, then we would have a better world that we're living in.
Yeah.
But I brought that scene up to say that what reminded me of Avery is when Avery has scenes with children, okay, or when he's at a convention and he's dealing with children, and I've seen him, seen this with my own eyes many times. He has his own special handshake that he gives. And he used to do it with my little sister. He used to do it with. I think he even did it with my daughter when he first met my daughter as a child. But he does this thing where he extends his hand out to you, and it's not a handshake. It's just like a finger touch.
Like
where
E.T.?
It's yeah, where he kind of puts his hand out towards you, and it's just like all you have to do is touch fingers. So he's not trying. It's not a handshake. It's more like it's like a finger touch.
Yeah, a little connection.
And a little connection, and he always does it with children because that's his way of just extending himself to the child and ingratiating himself to them, and also it's this non-threatening, very subtle way of connecting with somebody. And that same kind of hand gesture, hand extension was done between Pike and number one at the end of this scene where she asked to be reported to Starfleet and whatnot. He finally says, Pike says, I'll take care of it, and he reaches his hand out and they do that little finger touch. They don't make a handshake. She just kind of fingertip touches. And I thought, oh, man, that's what Avery does. And it reminded me exactly of just the kind of moves he's made in his performances.
That's really cool. That's something only you could catch. The rest of us wouldn't have made that connection. Yeah. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Also, with regards to the transporter, keeping somebody in the transporter, that had been explored before in The Next Generation. They had James Doohan playing Scotty, popping up in The Next Generation. And I believe the episode was called Relics. I feel like he was in there for like 80 years or something. So we know, Star Trek fans know, that somebody can be trapped or held in the transporter buffer for, forever, theoretically. So that was just interesting to note. It definitely reminded me of that when I saw that. Also an episode with Reginald Barclay, Lieutenant Reginald Barclay. He also has some shenanigans in there, but not really trapped. There's just worm aliens in there or whatever. But there's always some kind of shenanigans going on with those transporters. But it was an interesting, what's the word I'm looking for? Structure to this episode, because it felt like the episode itself was only 30 minutes. And then they had an additional 10 minutes of talking about it, talking it over. Kind of reminds you a bit about Discovery, where they like to discuss what happened. And then they had another 10 minutes of like a short trek of like, Dr. Mbenga's daughter. And it was just an interesting structure, I thought, where it was like the episode was solved with 15, 20 minutes left to go. And so I found myself going, what are they going to do with this? How are they, And so that was fun. And they're exploring strange new script structures. And I am here for all of it. I love what they're doing. I love that each episode has kind of a different feel. I love that each episode gives us more information on a different character. And I'm already expecting each episode, in the future to be doing more of this. Like episode 4, what's that going to be about? Hemmer? I don't know. Is it going to be a Spock episode? Is it going to be, and any of the other guys? It can be anybody. Ortegas. And I'm just really looking forward to that. I'm very happy with this. I think it's easy to watch. It's very digestible. It's fun. It's interesting. I can't wait to watch more of this, honestly.
Yeah, I will say that I did find the structure unusual as well, because at some point I said, well, we still have another 15 minutes to go. And like the problem's been solved. The other thing was a little bit interesting to me was I didn't think the Spock Pike storyline was flushed out too much. Mm-hmm. It seemed kind of there were loose ends that I didn't see the whole reason for that whole thing. I think they could have explained, for example, the room that they were in and what function it had, what those little cylinders meant. I didn't get a feel for what really was happening on that.
Yeah, I felt the same way. And what I did with that, because it was pretty early on, like I was pretty early on in that second story, was I going like, I'm not really sure what Spock and Pike are doing. I'm not really sure what the situation is. But I found myself saying, you know what? I don't care. I don't need to know. I don't think that's really the point of the episode. I think that I don't need to get too lost in the details of that.
Right.
And luckily, I was right. Otherwise, I would have had to go back and study it better. But it just kind of felt like they needed to do something off the ship to give Una her moment to shine and everybody else. It was, so I'm not really sure if that was important or not, but I treated it as like, don't think about it too hard. They're off struggling, doing some whatever. This episode is more about what's going on the ship. And I think maybe they also did it because they might feel like they need to give Spock and Pike their moments for the fans. But personally, as a fan, I don't need Pike and Spock stuff. You can give me an Una-centric episode. You can give me a Hemmer or Ortegas-centric episode. I'll be fine. You don't need to give us the obligatory Pike and Spock stuff to keep me happy. I'll be fine. I'm perfectly interested in all of the characters equally, and they've done a great job of giving us 9 very interesting and distinctive characters. I don't need a crutch. I'm perfectly happy following each one of their stories individually. I think they've done a great job introducing those characters, and now they can just ride them out.
Yeah. I thought the story was good. There were moments that I really thought were interesting, and I was wondering where the hell are they going to go with this? For example, when Uhura I think it's Uhura, when she's walking down the corridor and the guy like breaks the window with his head. He tries to smash through there, right? Yeah. I was like, boy, they really need Gorilla Glass. Their glass is not that strong. If this one guy's head can just...
I was calling that guy Ensign Loki, because you can't tell me he doesn't look like Loki, man. Call him Ensign Lance or something. I was like, no, that's Ensign Loki.
Lance, yeah. And then the other thing that I thought was really like a nice moment was when Hemmer was trying to beam in the core of the planet, and number one saw her and said, "Hey, it's going to be 1,000 degrees or whatever," and he's like, "Yeah,
10,000,
10,000. I want that." So I thought that was a great moment there. Also, I like his character in general. Hemmer, I think, is great for comic relief. There was a moment early on, he says, "I am a genius," when he tells Kyle, the transporter guy, "How'd you do it?" He's like, "I am a genius." His delivery is great, and I think he's going to be a very interesting character going forward once they give us some more backstory on him.
Who do you think are going to be the fan favorites? Like, let's say season 1 is over. Who do you think people are just going to be going apeshit for?
I think it's going to be Pike, Hemmer, and I think they've got something from Ortegas that's going to be a surprise. I think there's
surprise coming,
yeah. Because I think she looks like a badass, and she's going to prove herself to be like, something's going to happen where it's going to be like she's a badass and we need her. But they're just developing all these stories, and I think it's it's still a little early to tell where it's going to go. But there's some moments there. We had the fight scene with La'an and Una in this episode, right?
Yeah,
good old fashioned beatdown scene. And I just like the pace of it. In general, this show starting off really well. There's something to be said about an episode that's encapsulated and begins and ends in this story, so I don't have to worry about long-term stuff. I feel like you watch it and you're done with it. You don't have to remember things, and worry about what's happening in the next episode. So they're giving us a little bit of less serialization, which I'm okay with, just a little bit less of it.
Yeah, but I think what they're giving us is character development serialization, because the story ends at the end of every episode, but the character development is serialized. And I think that's brilliant because it gives us this through line through the episodes, but again, just for the characters, the story and the plot itself closes down. So we now know Mbenga has this daughter that he's holding, and that was such a sweet moment when number one says, "Here, we'll get a piece of the warp core to give you permanent power there, so it'll never happen again, and you can keep your daughter, and we're not going to have to kill her, of course." And his daughter's name is Rukia, by the way, so I'm assuming that's some sort of Kenyan name. I believe they said he was from Kenya, and the actor is from Nigeria, I believe. But it's really good to have these little serialized moments, and it tells me why. It kind of answers my question. At the beginning of this episode, I've noticed at the beginning of episode 3 and the beginning of episode 2, they say previously on Strange New Worlds. And my first thought is, what do you need the previously stuff for? The episodes end. We don't need, there's no to be continued. But I think they're doing that for just the character serialization. So I'll have to watch that next time. When we watch episode 4, I'm going to have to see if when they do the previously on, if they're just focusing on character development. Because now when they do that, I'm like, I don't need to, I know what happened and then it doesn't matter anyway, you know? But it's interesting.
A couple of moments that I thought were, I had problems with, small issues. And these are my little nitpicks, but
get them.
Number one, when Una's first instinct is to lie to Dr. Mbenga when he says, "Have you suffered any symptoms of this same?"
Yeah.
I didn't like that her first instinct was to lie, because I'm thinking, you've worked your way up. You're one of the best number ones in Starfleet. You must have integrity. You must have all of these things. You must have intelligence. So you know that lying could have detrimental effects to everybody, right? So it just doesn't seem like something you would do at that level.
Right. I had that same feeling, but I think I understand in hindsight what that was because she was hiding the secret that she's Illyrian. And so when she got these symptoms and it didn't totally destroy her, she must have assumed, oh, it must be because I'm Illyrian and it's affecting me differently. So it wasn't so much that she was lying to the doctor so much as continuing her lie. She was protecting her Illyrian lie. So to her, she's doing a white lie to protect her ongoing bigger lie. Again, that doesn't excuse it, but I think that's what that was the reason behind it.
No, I later got that, but it still didn't, unless, I mean, obviously you've had physicals and whatnot, so you've had blood tests and whatever to get into Starfleet. So there would be nothing physiological that they would be able to identify you as an Illyrian right off of the bat if you just said, yes, I experienced these symptoms, and it went away real fast. I just didn't see the necessity for the lie, and it bothered me because it's a small thing, but I get they try to explain it. The thing that I had a bigger issue was when apparently the Illyrians are like the strongest people ever, because when Hammer was knocked out and she was walking down the corridor with him over her shoulder, it looked like it was like a beanbag. It was like, did you see, there was no weight or even
and that was
appearance of weight.
Right. And but then she's also an augment.
Right.
So being an augment, just like La'an, they have like this superhuman strength. So I think that strength came from being an augment and not an Illyrian. So she's an Illyrian and an augment, apparently, which is confusing. And it's also crazy that they have two augments now as well.
Yeah.
So it's just, it's just one of those things where they're creating, the writers are creating characters that are multifaceted and multi-layered. And so I'm like, yeah, is her strength come from being an augment or an Illyrian?
Yeah. The strength, even if you have extra strength, you're still, I mean, it's like when you go to the groceries and you're holding a grocery bag too long, even at groceries, I mean, you're strong, you can hold it, but it's still, after a while, it's like it bears its weight on you, right? Nobody can walk with somebody on their shoulder like they're just, like just like it's normal weight.
Well, you've never been an augment before then.
Oh, well, true. So I was kind of laughing a little bit on just the confidence that she was walking down. It was like having a jacket. It was like having your jacket over the shoulder, right?
I think that was the direction that they must have given her too, because I noticed that the direction clearly was walk as if it's no problem at all. So so people are like, no, it's not just that she's very strong. It's that she's superhuman strong. Like there's something more beyond her just like lugging some guy. She's lugging some guy and it's like nothing to her.
Yeah. So don't piss her off, guys. Also, but no, I thought the story of Dr. Mbenga, by the way, there used to be a basketball player named DJ Mbenga on the Lakers who played with Kobe not too long ago, but
very nice.
You remember him, Dr. Mbenga. I thought the thing that was really cool about his story, because he mentioned the fact that he's a doctor and he can't save his daughter, and that was the conflict that was inside of him at the time. That he's been wrestling with. And I thought that's an interesting story, and actually a very believable one, because it has happened in the past. And there's a famous story of Nostradamus being a person who was going around curing people of the bubonic plague when it was, ravaging people's lives. And so Nostradamus was going around and curing people, giving them his cocktail of herbs and medicines and teaching them about hygiene and washing foods and food storage. And this allowed people to get better. But while he was out gallivanting and curing the rest of the world, his own family died from the plague. And so when he returned home, everybody kind of, scarred him or put this scarlet letter on him, because they're saying, hey, you are a fraud. You went around, you're supposedly curing everybody, but you couldn't even save your own wife and children. That is what led Nostradamus to become the Nostradamus that we know to this day. He originally was a medicinal kind of healer. But then he went in, because he was shunned by society when his family died, he turned into this prophecy Nostradamus that we later knew. And that's the origin of that is because his family died and he was unable to save them.
And I feel like, if I remember correctly, he saw that in a vision that his family would die or something like that. I believe he saw that. And so when they did die, it was kind of part of it. The reason he moved on also into a different kind of profession was because that kind of validated this vision that he always had. If I remember correctly, I think that's how it happened as well, was, basically he's like, wow, this was foretold to me. Maybe I should start listening to these prophecies that I'm seeing. Yeah.
Right.
Also, very quickly, if I remember correctly, I thought that he was Belgian, but he's Belgian Congolese. So originally from the Congo, and through Belgium, and then to Kobe Bryant's Lakers. DJ Mbenga.
Yeah. So when I heard Mbenga on Star Trek, I was like, wait a minute, there was an Mbenga. I know an Mbenga. And he spells his name the same way, except there's no apostrophe.
Same guy. I remember him now. I had forgotten.
Yeah.
Okay. So we only have a few minutes left here, but I did want to point out also that they mentioned that the aliens or the Illyrians in that colony turned into plasma. That is science that's above my head, but we'll have to ask Dr. Mohamed Noor and be like, how do people turn into plasma? Can you explain that to us? Also good at interactions with Una, Nurse Chapel, and Dr. Mbenga. Really cool to see the three of them. Remember, that's my favorite thing, is just seeing how certain, twosomes or threesomes or foursomes interact with each other. That's really where you learn about the characters. You separate them from the group, and you watch how they interact, watch how they solve things, the roles that each of them takes, except for when they said, how do we fix it? And we're all saying, turn off the lights. And rather than them saying, turn off the lights, they go, well, light hates dark, dark hate. We're like, yes, we just turn off the lights. Just say it. And he says, turn off the lights. We're like, yes. But it was a great interaction. I liked it a lot. The three of them.
Yeah, and also the little bit of science behind that, I thought was an interesting,
definitely,
kind of scientific approach, where they said, "Oh, it's not a virus, it's not a bacteria. How is this thing spreading through light?" Great, substitute for that. I thought it was a good idea.
And we got to see more of Lieutenant Kyle and the transporter. He's going to be in so many episodes because so many episodes use the transporter, I'm sure. So Kyle's going to be our guy. I have a feeling he's going to become kind of like a dark horse fan favorite. And maybe one episode we'll see him outside of the transporter room someday. And we'll be like, hey, he finally got his moment, where he's like eating cake or something at the, at the party. And we'll be like, Kyle, get back to transporter 3. What are you doing eating cake? Get your ass back in the transporter room. But for now, it's great to see him. I think we've seen him in every episode so far.
Yeah, he gets a little shine every once in a while, and I think it's great. And who knows where his story can go? He might turn out to be in Eddington for all we know.
Ooh.
Dun dun dun.
Let's pull up Don Crandall's trivia, because I bet there's a lot of it in this one. First of all, he's got the picture of the Illyrian here from Enterprise. So this is Casey Biggs. That's Damar. Here's the Illyrian that we remember from Enterprise. Looks very different. Also, let's see. So also Don tells us, let's just go through it because there's a lot. Although number one's backstory and even her name vary in some Star Trek novels. Oh yeah, we've mentioned that they're Illyrians. We did already pull that up. And he says, my personal opinion is it's ambiguous if Casey Biggs's Illyrian was the same species as those from Strange New Worlds, and this may be a rare example of the novel writers and the episode writers coincidentally using the same name for two different species. So he thinks it might be possible that Casey Biggs's Illyrian and Strange New Worlds Illyrian is just two different aliens that happen to have the same name. That would be pretty bold. That's a bold guess. I don't know. Then he also mentions the augments. Enterprise had an epic 3-parter with Brent Spiner as the mad scientist, much like his recent one from Star Trek Picard, who experimented on augments. He sends us a picture of that. That's kind of fun. Yeah, Enterprise dealt with these a lot. So that's Brent Spiner here talking to the augment kids. And let's see, what else does he have for us? Then he's got a picture of people at Star Trek Las Vegas cosplaying as augments. And I do remember this year, it was maybe like 5, 6, 7 years ago. And a few of our friends were there. Of course, Darnell Davis is one of them. Actually, I'll just pull them up because these people deserve the shout out. I remember this year. There's our boy Darnell. Chris, Sue, lots of people we know. Looking really good there, Heather.
So augments could be from any species, right? Like Ferengi?
I don't know that. I think they're just a specific group of people that were created by this other Soong, Eric Soong, I think it might have been.
Okay.
So he created them, so they just all look like humans, I guess.
Because if they were Ferengi, then they would be Nogmens. Thank you. I'll be here next week, ladies and gentlemen.
Excellent work. Excellent. And I almost ruined your joke too. You're like, so they can be free. I'm like, no. And you're like, no, we're pulling it back. We're
gonna get there.
Don't ruin my joke. Then he says Mbenga keeping his daughter in a transporter pattern buffer and occasionally materializing her is how Scotty survived from the TOS movie era to Next Generation's relics. We mentioned that. Says it reminds him of an Enterprise episode about the inventor of the transporter, at least Earth's version, Dr. Emery Erickson, whose son was lost in a transporter accident for many years. I'd forgotten that. Good stuff. His son's pattern was apparently too far gone, though, and once materialized, he died in his father's arms. Yeah, that was a sad one. I had forgotten that one. So this is very reminiscent of that. And of course, Una's keeping her being genetically enhanced a secret is much like the angle for Dr. Bashir, as we know in Deep Space Nine. Good stuff from Don Crandall. Thank you, Don Crandall, for that information.
Yeah.
All right. So this one had a lot of stuff from the original series and from Enterprise, which is to be expected because really they can only pull from original series, Enterprise, and Discovery. Really are the three things that happened before this time frame here in Strange New Worlds. So we'll probably get a lot of Enterprise stuff. That'll be cool. Okay. Bummer that John Billingsley is not in it. Apparently he said himself that he was asked to play a role in Strange New Worlds, but turned it down. Because it wouldn't be to reprise his role of Dr. Phlox. But I think we should reprise Dr. Phlox and T'Pol and Archer and put in an old ass Hoshi and Travis in there and Reed, whatever. Let's do it. We deserve it. Anyway. All right. Any final thoughts before we run?
Not really. I think one of the things that they ended this episode on was secrets. And number one was talking a lot about secrets. Everybody has their own secrets, and we're all dealing with our own secrets. And clearly Pike has his secret, or it's not so much of a secret, but whatever's going to happen to him down the line and him dealing with that. And you saw La'an dealing with her augment and being called a monster and all of that stuff, damaging her mentally. Uhura had her secrets of being scared and not really wanting the role that she's being forced into, or she's now being thrust into. So I think that's going to be the theme for this first season. It's going to be, what are everybody's secrets?
Yeah. Yeah, kind of like what's their backstory? What's their secret? What's their flaw?
Right.
But that's great. That's what makes good characters. Everybody knows La'an's last name is Moorman, and I think that is it for this week. So,
oh man. I just got that. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it wasn't the best. So maybe it would have been better if you didn't get it. Anyway, okay. So we do have to run, everybody. But before we do, we'd like to give a very special thanks to our friends, Homer Frizzell, Dr. Anne-Marie Segal, Eve England out in Wales, Yvette Blackmon, Carmen, a.k.a. Skillet, TJ Jackson-Bey, Timothy Baum, aka of course Grandpa One. We love that guy as well. Titus Mohler, Bill Victor Arucan, Darlena Marie, John Mann, Dr. Mohamed Noor, the aforementioned, Tierney C. Dieckmann, Anna Post, Anil O. Palat, Rex A. Wood, Erica Strom, Joe Balcerati, Mike Gu, the enigma known as DeQ, Neil Akasaka, and of course, everybody knows and loves Dr. Susan V. Gruner.
Yes.
All right. So everybody, thank you for joining us. We will see you next week, and that will be for episode 4. This is great stuff. Let us know in the comments below what you think so far of the first 3 episodes and of this episode specifically. Are you loving it? How much? How does this episode compare to the others? What are you expecting in the next 7 episodes and the subsequent seasons? What do you think? It's so funny. It's like we only did within the first episode, I already knew what this show was going to be about, what it was like. They did a great job of laying out a formula. And so you immediately know what to expect from here on out. We get it.
Yeah. Yeah. It already starting to feel familiar.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, cool. So we will all see you next time. And until then, everybody, be good to each other. What was that? Jerry Springer? What did he say? Be good to yourselves and each other, something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
And always remember the 7th rule.